Welcome to everyone. Definitely want to say thank you to all of our guests that have joined us, all of our panelists. We are starting the African American Equity and Media Forum. This is a live conversation with African American journalists. This event is hosted by LA Civil Rights and it is supported by Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas. We are so glad that you're able to join us for this vital conversation. Today with me is Angel Jennings, the assisting managing editor of the LA Times Cultural and Talented and Talent for our local newspaper. I think it is so important to see someone of her level to rise through the ranks of the LA Times, to be on the masthead. It is truly an honor to have you with us. Among many other things, Angel oversees the LA Times' MetPro program for young journalists with diverse backgrounds. And I believe you were a member of that program at one time. Jennings also covered the final moments of Nipsey Hussle in 2019. And you should know that this is the most read piece of the year of 2019. We also have Brandon Brooks, who is serving as the managing editor of the Los Angeles Sentinel. The Los Angeles Sentinel is one of the most historic newspapers written by and for the African American community. Brandon has also been with the Sentinel for over 15 years, holding an incredible depth of knowledge on South Los Angeles and LA's African American communities. And last, but certainly not least, we have the distinguished Beverly White, a reporter with NBC Los Angeles. Beverly is well known to many of you. She comes into your homes, and for those that stay up late, you get to see her on the 11 o'clock news. And having served as a NBC reporter for nearly 30 years, she has covered the Northridge earthquake, the mass shooting in Arroyo, Colorado, the mudslides in Montecito, and so much more. As a longstanding and highly regarded African-American woman in journalism, Beverly has also served as the president of the Black Journalists Association of Southern California. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. Um, the the conversation today is meant to explore the state of equity in LA's newsrooms, the challenges and the opportunities facing Black journalists. We discussed earlier that having representation matters, and we also need to have a pipeline for people to become editors, for people to become producers that have lived experiences that can deal with some of the things that impact our communities. And because it makes all of us better to share that information more broadly, and especially with the last year of racial reckoning, as we had the election of the nation's first Black woman, serving as our vice president. What has that meant for African American journalists, reporting that story or reporting some of the hardships that we've experienced as a people this year. As we started the event today, we had music that was playing on the playlist from Hamilton, and they were saying, who lives, who dies, who tells your story? And so many of you were telling our story, whether it was a success or some of the challenges that we faced in 2020 and 2021 as we speak of racial inequities, but even the COVID-19 crisis that impacted our communities disproportionately. So we have so much to get to, but first, it is my honor to introduce Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas to say a few words.
Hello, Los Angeles City Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas here. It's my honor to welcome you for this timely and necessary conversation on African American equity in the media. We stand at the precipice of a critical turning point for African Americans and the African American community across America. A turning point only made possible by generations of activism, organizing, and community collaboration. In the past year, we have seen our nation reckon with the race in a very visceral manner. And we have seen communities like ours come together to make it absolutely clear that Black lives matter. Covering these events and standing on the front lines of history are the African American reporters, photographers, and newspapers, so crucial to our nation's conversation. But so rarely do we ask, what are their experiences? Working for equity and empowerment doesn't just stop at the boundaries of our communities. It must also involve our newsrooms. What does it mean to be an African American journalist in America today? And how do we bring more voices of color into the newsrooms which tell our stories? Today's event will explore these questions and more. We're fortunate to have with us incredible journalists from the Los Angeles Times, from the Los Angeles Sentinel, and from NBC Los Angeles. I want to give a shout out to Jennings, Beverly White, and Brandon Brooks, esteemed journalists who have offered their voices to today's conversation. I also want to shout out Capri Maddox, Executive Director of the Los Angeles Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department, who's hosting this event with me. Thank you all for joining us, and let's continue to work together to build equity in all the systems that shape our lives.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas, for that warm intro. I'd like to, jump right into it and start with, some of our questions for our panelists, because I really want to hear, from them about their experiences, particularly in all the things that have happened in the 2020, 2021 years. I'm going to start this question for all. As prominent and well-recognized journalists in your own respective fields, can you tell us about your early start as a journalist and what excited you the most about getting into the field of journalism? I think a lot of people want to know, how did you get your start? How did you know this was your gift and talent? So let's see, how about we start with Beverly White?
If you insist. Thank you, Capri.
Okay, who wants to start?
I don't mind.
Okay.
I don't mind, but thank you. I was waiting to hear the other answers, but I'll dive right in and share mine briefly. I'm originally from Texas. I'm an Army brat. And because I've just been inquisitive all my life, it seemed a natural fit. But I wasn't sure until I arrived at college and was steered toward journalism in my junior year. So it was a late decision, but one I've never regretted. Attended the University of Texas at Austin, and I've worked across the country in my home state, in Cincinnati, Ohio, Miami, Florida, and now Los Angeles, where NBC has blessed me with more years than I care to admit. But it's been a wonderful run thus far. I'm still having fun and learning about my adopted hometown, because Cali is home, but Texas still holds my heart. So keep my home state in prayer as they recover from the winter storm, including my parents, who were snowbound but never lost power. And it's stories like that that resonate with all of our communities. That one, of course, is not race-based, but it just underscores the fact that people need news, and staying current on stories like that is part of the reason I was attracted to this field. My late grandfather used to quote Walter Contact. He used to call him Walter Contact because he didn't really know the man's name, but he knew he loved network news. And I would sit at his foot and we'd watch the news together when I was just a little girl, and it infected me. I fell in love with current events, and the rest is history, as they say. But it's been a fascinating ride, being paid to be nosy. So I count my lucky stars, and I'm honored to be on this panel.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that answer. And our thoughts are definitely with the good folks of Texas. And by the way, you missed your chance to say hook 'em horns. I would have done it for you, but this is all that could come up. I couldn't fix my fingers to do the hook 'em horns. That's something Beverly likes to do, and representing her home state. Angel, let's hear from you.
Beverly's story was so inspiring, and it reminds me of my own journey as well, of just being nosy, being talkative, and always being that kid that my mother said, like, just like, stay out of grown folks' business and just sit back and just listen. And I mean, I learned to listen and I kept asking questions, and that ultimately led me to this field. I started writing when I was in high school, probably even before then, like elementary school. I was entering in literary contests and such like that. And then it just snowballed into high school, being part of the school newspaper and doing extracurricular activities like on the weekends and the summers that were all connected to journalism. And then I got a scholarship to go to University of Nebraska in Lincoln. I know, cold, Midwest. But it was such a great opportunity to just like study my craft and to get a real support system, and like get like hands-on training to be a journalist. I was really pushed to do summer internships, even though I wanted to go back home to my hometown of DC every summer. I was told, like, in order to get a job, you have to get experience. This piece of paper is going to mean nothing without some experience behind it. So I was pushed to take internships, and it was like the best thing for me. I got to like travel and visit new states and learn about new places. And I was paid to do this. And I was paid to like get better at my craft. And I was just so happy for that early push to be in uncomfortable situations where I can learn to adapt and just learn and grow. And so my first internship was at the Shreveport Times in Louisiana. Then I was in Minneapolis and then New York and Boston. I got to go to some cool places, all because of my career. And I just can't tell that to people enough, that you can do what you love to do and make money off of it, make an impact, and really just be able to also hold people accountable and tell the stories of people who allow you into their home. That's such a privilege. And so I see it in my little daughter now, as she asks me all these questions. She's just as curious, that like we all have it in us. It's like determining where you want to take that. You are needed in this career, and you should look into it. If you like to talk and you're nosy, you like to write, like this is a good career for you.
No, that is awesome. And we will be asking you some questions about how we can get more young people involved. We'll ask you those questions in just a moment, but I want to hear from Brandon. Like, what gave you your start? What encouraged you to take journalism on as your career path?
Well, yeah. Well, again, thank you for this opportunity today. Just such a prestige panel. Beverly, Angel, yourself, Capri, and congratulations on your role with the department. Really looking forward to more work that you all do to bring about equity in the city, because it's needed, and it's definitely needed in many ways. But my story's not like too different from many other people out there, in the sense that I came on board in about 2005, 2006 with the Sentinel, as you shared. I've been here about 15 years. I was trying to find my way. I was fresh out of college. I had just got let go, or as I like to say, fired from Warner Brothers Television as a production assistant. And I had also, similar to Angel, I had worked internship with William Morris Agency in college, and just knew I wanted to be in the entertainment field, the production field. I was a rapper. I was an artist. I had thrown parties and concerts, and I have a very storied past. It'll be a great book one day, if anybody cares to read it. But seriously, just like anybody, just trying to find my way. So as I was let go at Warner Brothers, I went over to my cousin, Danny Bakewell Jr., who is the president of the Los Angeles Sentinel. His father, my uncle, is the publisher of the LA Sentinel, Danny Bakewell Sr. So I am blessed to come from a family that is involved in this business. And I had the opportunity to I had an olive branch to reach out and say, hey, let me come over and see what I can do. Danny and I have had a great relationship my entire life, as he's worked in the field of construction, and I was interning with him at 10 years old, 12 years old. So he and I had a relationship to where he trusted me. I said, hey man, I want to, learn the business, let me come over there. So I dove in. I worked in classified. I worked in accounting, accounts receivable. I worked in production. I worked in any and every aspect of the business. And I just fell in love with it. It became something that I never imagined. So similar to, like, I know Angel says, when speaking to people, I tell people, just, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, because you really don't know what you are capable of until you're, in that position. So yeah, I hit the ground running, and I worked my way up in the editorial simultaneously on the executive side. So I was, an assistant editor of entertainment. I moved over to the managing editor role, and I had great tutors from Yusef Simmons to Ken Miller and the editors before me. So I've just been blessed with an abundance of knowledge. I'm blessed to have a family. My mother is also works in the business. She's the COO, Pamela Bakewell. So it's a family affair. But again, the LA Sentinel, we'll get into that, has been around for close to 90 years, 87 years. It's an institution. I'm someone that's just carrying a torch. I'm blessed to do what I do. I love to do what I do. I love Black people. I love to experience this panel today because I get to learn. Every day I get to learn about our people, and I get to amplify that because it's not amplified enough. So to see Beverly, to see Angel, to see you, Capri, you're what inspires me. And that's what the Sentinel is about, is to highlight individuals like yourself out there. So just that's a little bit, kind of my abbreviated story, but willing to take any questions, later on. But that's how I got into this business.
All right. Thank you so much, Brandon. And we appreciate your family and your legacy that you are building in Los Angeles. And we are very, very grateful for the continued support of the Sentinel for Los Angeles residents. If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to pop out of order on the questions, because people are really interested in this space of, how people got started. And Angel, we may jump to you in just a moment to, really get a sense of how we can get more young people interested in becoming journalists. Angel, that we are dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, and a lot of our students are doing work virtually. And I think it is really important for folks. And I think there was a question in the chat about, how do kids, get the journalist bug while they're, in quarantine, and how can they get involved with internships and opportunities. But I really wanted to focus on the fact that you were named the Los Angeles Times managing editor for cultural and talent, and joining the masthead in September of 2020. Many people from our community actually have the masthead and keep mementos like your accomplishments. But among many other things, you oversee the MetPro Diversity Fellowship Program at the Times, which is how you joined the paper, if I recall. Can you tell us a little bit about the MetPro program, its importance to the Times, and the reporters, and how it's important for reporters of color?
I want to take that whole question and answer for every stage what people can do to get into journalism, because from middle school, high school, even elementary school, maybe not as young as elementary school, we have these powerful devices in our hands, our cell phones. They are all you really need to be a journalist nowadays. Of course, there's morality and integrity and all the skills you'll pick up along the way in the ethics of being a journalist, but being able to just document what you're seeing, a photo with a caption that tells us what, when, where, how, and why, what we're seeing. All of that helps informs and builds that journalism muscle from the ground up. You can do that now. You can take videos, you can write short stories. So many blogs are doing that on Twitter. They'll have a blog on Twitter or Instagram where they're just talking about the news, talking about what they see, their neighborhood. And those things you can build upon that as you're applying for college. So once you're in college, I would just strongly urge anybody who's interested in journalism to get involved in your school newspaper. If you're interested on the broadcasting side, there's a space for you there at your school, whether it's with marketing or whether they have a TV station. If you want to be a producer, find a way to be able to practice your craft on a campus setting, because that will give you the clips you need and the video you need to then submit to go to a larger publication, to a legacy paper or a blog or any kind of summer internship. And how you apply for those is typically a cover letter, resume. You put in some of the work you've done. You explain why you're the best person for this job, a little bit about yourself, and you send it off. Every year I would send off a dozen applications for summer internships. And every summer I would mostly get one acceptance. One year I got 2, but that was it. Every other time they were just rejections. And I kept those rejections because they're motivation, it's part of the business. It's part of life. We're not going to always get every opportunity we seek, but you hopefully will learn from that experience to keep going, because in any profession, you just have to keep going. And so one internship just builds on another. You start at a smaller publication, whether it's a weekly or it's a blog, and then you keep applying for someplace higher. And so I shared my story. I was at the Shreveport Times, then the Minneapolis Star Tribune, the Boston Globe, and the New York Times. Those all had bigger circulations. They just kept climbing. And it was also like, hopefully I had more skills. That's how I was able to land those other internships. And at the LA Times, we offer internships. We actually expanded the program this summer, which I'm so happy about. We typically have about 14, but we have 20 this year, and they're paid internships. You can learn more about them at www.latimes.com/interns. And we also have 5 spring interns for the first time. And I'm really excited about that. Like, one of the students who actually got an internship, he like did a video announcement, and it was just so cool. Cause like what he said it was like he was being drafted to a team, that he just got selected as an LA Times intern. But that really just shows that, like, you know, he sees this as moving into the big leagues. This was like a launch pad for his career, and it really is. And so there are opportunities out there. You just got to keep pounding the pavement, keep knocking on the door. Once you graduate from college, we have a program called MetPro. It's a 2-year fellowship, and it's pretty much a training program that, like, if you are interested in journalism, you have a little bit experience. We max out at this experience at the 5-year mark. If you have more than 5 years of industry experience, then like you have too much experience to apply. You can actually at that time start applying for LA Times jobs. And to learn more about that program, you can go to www.metpronews.com. It's 2 years. We do training in the classroom. We actually go take tours of LAPD, the courts. We're pulling files, we're writing stories, and then you're actually in the newsroom writing stories, working alongside like some of the most esteemed, hard-hitting journalists out there. And we just really along the way hold your hands, provide feedback and guidance to hopefully like land a job at the LA Times or maybe elsewhere. People go on to do amazing things. It's a 37-year program, and I was part of the class of 2011, and now I'm on the masthead as the assistant managing editor of culture and talent. So there is a pathway, and like there's pathways to so many different things. It might be audience engagement or being on the design desk or doing data graphics. You don't just have to write. There's so much to do in journalism, whether you're in front of the screen, behind the screen. And like, if you're interested in just like framing and telling stories and shaping them and talking to people, you can find a place for you to fit in this industry. Oh, and I want to also add, MetPro is also paid. Like, we value at the LA Times, like we're committed to finding, training, and cultivating the next generation of journalists. And we want to pay them as we're doing it. And so I will always encourage you to try to find paid internships, but sometimes you might have to start off unpaid, but hopefully you can get paid internships.
All right. No, that's great advice. We appreciate the question. And I believe Tatiana Ramirez put that question, part of that question in the chat for us. We are very grateful. I wanted to acknowledge also that we have a couple of commissioners that are on the line with us today, Commissioner Irma Becerra Nunez and Commissioner Angelica Solis Montero from the Human Relations Commission. And of course, I do see that we have a couple of other folks in the media, Cora Jackson Fawcett from the Los Angeles Sentinel, as well as Day Levine that is in charge of comms for the mayor's office. So we are very, very grateful to have some friendly names on the list here. My next question is for Beverly White. You have been a familiar face to Angelenos for many years, reporting for NBC4 since 1992, another year of racial reckoning here in Los Angeles. As someone who has covered Los Angeles for decades, I'm curious to know, how have things changed? How have things remained the same, both for African-American communities, but also for African-American reporters?
Wow, that is a big question. And I like how you underscored many, many years that I've been here, because it's true, but I don't like to think about that because it has flown by. This is an amazing news market to be a part of. And it's my distinct honor coming from one high school town in Central Texas. I never dreamed I'd be in Los Angeles. I actually dreamed of maybe Dallas because it's the big city I watched growing up. Dallas never called, but LA did. And for that, I'm grateful. But when I got the call, I was working in Miami. And I was a little weary of covering, among other things, Hurricane Andrew. It's a tough market. It's a big city. And hurricane stories go on for months because the aftermath will just take your breath away and break your heart on a daily basis. A news manager who was aware of my situation there called me to Los Angeles and offered me a job. And God bless her, she's still around. I thank her every time I see her because it improved my life, bringing me out here. But I came after the Rodney King riots, the disturbances of early 92. I came out in the fall of 92. And I was told that my hire had a great deal to do with the racial reckoning of that era. They didn't call it that, but there were just a shortage of Black reporters in this city. And I was brought from across the country to help boost those numbers at NBC4. And I'm glad they had the foresight to include me, fresh eyes perhaps, in a very big newsroom where I didn't know anybody, but hit the ground running, which is what journalists do. We're pretty adaptable as a bunch. And it was a very embracing environment to be here. But I learned right away, they'd gone 7 years at KNBC, NBC4, without a Black female reporter. So it was big shoes to step into and kind of overwhelming at the same time because I didn't know the city, but again, we learned fast. We hit the nooks and crannies like taxi drivers. We know the shortcuts, we know how to get places and meet people with a quickness. So among other things that have changed in this city, of course, me arriving and learning fast what I had stepped into with no regrets at all, but at the same time, seeing more reporters come and go of color, always wishing there were more Black reporters in the streets, frankly, and on the anchor desks. I've seen that change considerably in the last few years. And the racial reckoning has got us all taking a good hard look at our personnel and not only the African-American numbers, but the stories that are told by our peers of all races, because we all have a stake in this. It's not just about the Black reporters trying to fix systemic racism as it pertains to newsrooms, but working with people who agree that we're all in this together. We all have a stake in meaningful truth-telling and portraying Blacks in our communities, not just as victims and villains, but the triumphs, the tragedies, the whole spectrum. And that's why I'm proud to be a part of not just this institution, NBC4, but this industry, because we are changing for the better. I see it, I'm a witness, and I could give you my testimony, but I don't want to take up the entire hour. But thank you for asking, because yes, there are signs of hope, but they are hard fought battles and victories. And praise be to the memory of George Floyd, because his passing awakened everyone to what lots of folks were talking about. It gave a chance for everyone to see some of the inequalities in the streets. And I have to throw this out. A 17-year-old girl captured that video. So when Angel talks about young folks having the power in the palm of their hands to change America and tell stories, remember a teenager got the ball rolling on the George Floyd situation. That video was captured by a 17-year-old African-American girl.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, and especially as we acknowledge the anniversary of the death of Ahmaud Arbery. Again, that was a story that we didn't hear about until March of 2020. But the incident actually happened today 1 year ago. And again, journalists made the difference in that space in Georgia, and a lot of things, have moved forward, like legislation. So the power of journalism is so powerful. And I think you sharing the fact that a voice is given, was given to George Floyd from a teenager really kind of dovetails onto the statements that Angel made earlier. I'd like to ask Brandon a question. The Los Angeles Sentinel is an institution in Los Angeles made by and for the Los Angeles African-American community. And you guys have been in this business for almost 90 years. I want you to talk a little bit about that, especially the importance of the African-American owned media, as well as how African-American reporters have elevated media coverage and discourse just in general.
Well, thank you again for that question. Great question. Black-owned media, I think, is crucial. It's critical. I think the Black press was founded with that note of understanding that Black people, we needed our own voice. We needed to speak for ourselves. We needed to make decisions in the newsroom that unfortunately, even today at times, without individuals like Beverly or Angel, may not be made if people like us aren't in those newsrooms making those decisions. So I think the importance of the Black press has always been crucial, and more than ever, as Beverly says, with the racial reckoning of America now, the Black press is even its importance is kind of being revealed again, or the veil is coming off. I mean, we all know we've been here, those journalists and Black journalists, but unfortunately, many times we are overlooked by you, if you want to call it mainstream. I like to still consider us mainstream, but again, that those types of things can be debated. But overall, I think the LA Sentinel has survived the times due to what you said. Black entrepreneurs. Colonel Leon Washington founded the paper back in the 30s with his wife Ruth Washington, and they carried the torch. And I mean, they just set a standard for papers across the country. So the LA Sentinel was blessed to have those publishers. It was passed on to Kenneth Thomas and Jennifer Thomas, who were the publishers after Leon Washington had passed away. It's important to note that his wife, Mrs. Washington, she handled the business for many years to come. I mean, she held it down, as they would say. And also when Kenneth and Jennifer Thomas took over, unfortunately, Mr. Thomas would pass. Jennifer Thomas ran the business for many years. And it's important to note, because as we see these beautiful Black women here on this panel on intelligence, Black women have always been the backbone of these institutions, and making sure, whether they are the owners, whether they are working the newsrooms, it can't survive without the woman and the man. And I think it's important to just see the importance of Mrs. Washington and Mrs. Thomas to see how they carried that torch. Ultimately, the torch was passed to Mr. Bakewell, because Mrs. Thomas, she even understood. She said, I don't want, a lot of people were trying to buy the Sentinel. A lot of media that, let's just say persons that weren't African-American or Black owned media companies. But she understood the importance of keeping it in the hands of Black ownership, because there's another story that's being told within the story. So a man like Danny Bakewell Sr. was in a position that she went to him and she said, hey, and he wasn't necessarily interested in the business, said he wasn't interested in the business, but it wasn't something that he just was pursuing per se. But he understood the importance of Black media, Black perspective, the torch of Black ownership, and the torch bearer who's handling that, and the importance of it. So I think, again, to somehow just stay on point with your question, Black ownership and Black owned has always been the backbone. And many institutions, we're part of an organization, the NMPA, the National News Publishers Association of America, the NMPA, Publishers Association, excuse me, of over 200 Black newspapers across the country. And these papers have been around, as I said, for we're creeping on 90 years. There's papers that have been around for over 100 years, close to 200 years. Not everyone has that long of a storied book, but we all as a collective know we're all telling that story. So again, to be part of the LA Sentinel's legacy, to be the managing editor in the position that I am, but I'm also on sales and advertising. We're still chugging at that wood, as they say, at the tree, because equity is important on all fronts, and it's advertising. It's also because that's how media is paid for, whether it's television. You've seen Byron Allen's been fighting people over the past couple of years for his equity. So, I can, get into it. We don't want to be preaching here too long, but ultimately, I think the importance is just that we do have Black individuals in positions of power making these decisions, because we need to make our decisions. We need to have Angel Jennings in newsrooms. We need Beverly White. And if it's not owned, we need positions of leadership to have critical influence. But ownership is critical, and I'm blessed to, again, be part of a family that is in the publishing business. I'm still an employee. I haven't gotten to that mark of a publisher yet, but one day maybe I can, get there. But again, just to be part of Black media, telling, the story, and being a critical voice for those that are disenfranchised. I saw someone with the question, how does disenfranchised youth, get opportunities? Come to the Sentinel. We may not, as Angel said, maybe we'll turn you down, but there's 190 other papers across the country, African-American owned, that may give you a shot if we're not available. So timing matters, but I think, like Angel said, you got to just stick with it and stay at it. So, but Black owned is important, and Black and entrepreneurship is very important.
Right. Thank you so much for that answer. And I do know we have a question that's in the chat. Laura Ball asked, what kind of revolutionary or out of the box actual tactics can be done to link those, to share our stories more broadly? I think you touched on it, but I don't know if in 30 seconds, if you had anything you wanted to add to that point.
And I'm sorry, can you repeat that, the last part?
What revolutionary or out of the box tactics can be done to link us to those who share our stories more broadly?
Well, I mean, I guess the revolution is, as they're saying now, it's with these phones, like Angel said. I mean, what we all can do right now is just take the power of knowing that we're all, as Beverly said, it was a 17-year-old girl that broke the story with George Floyd. But I think we just have to stay steady and not be deterred. We are going through a moment in American history where equity is really having a discussion that many times, we're even talking about reparations. Reparations was brought up in the presidential election in terms that we've never seen before. So we're seeing conversations expand. So I think journalism, we just need reporters to touch on these issues and not shy away from having that discussion. And again, the Black press, we've never been apologetic for having those discussions. Unfortunately, other media rooms, people are censored. African Americans are censored. Other cultures are censored. But in our position, we can be, as they say, a little bit more, radical. I don't like to use the term because we're just being Black. We're just being bold and we're being beautiful. So, that's my answer.
Thank you for that. And I know we have just about 24 minutes left in the discussion, but one thing that I would like to share in thinking about equity in the newsrooms, you should know that the Renew program, and someone can put that in the chat for us, the Renew program stands for racial equity in newly empowered workplaces. It's actually an acronym that was created by our Deputy Chief of Staff, Andre Hurden, who actually came from the Sentinel. And in that space, we have an opportunity for Black and brown business owners, especially in the media, to have more of a arrangement with companies that are voluntarily taking a pledge. It's a pledge with the mayor of the city of Los Angeles to increase the number of African Americans and Latinos that are hired, promoted. But one of the components of that plan is to make sure that we have more of a business development model for people when people are using media for outreach, that they're also supporting and making sure that they're represented in newspapers and other outlets for our communities, for the African American and Latino communities. And so I just really wanted to say that we really appreciate the mayor in that space, because it seems like you're wearing so many hats. I just didn't know if you were aware of that. I'd like to go to ask the next question of our very own Beverly White. You are not only an accomplished reporter, but an active leader in associations for Black journalists. You're a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and the past president of the Black Journalists Association of Southern California. When you organize with Black journalists, what issues and concerns are you hearing?
Well, a lot of it is just about sanity, staying on the job and staying focused and not losing your mind, because there's so much going on in the world. It's been a fire hose of breaking news this last year. In fact, even today, if you hadn't heard, Tiger Woods is involved in a car crash. And there have been alerts on my phone since we launched this conversation. And I'll probably dive into that story when I get off this call. We're trying to tell stories of African Americans doing good things and bad things and just changing our world. It's just so hard to get your arms around it sometimes, because these are communities and voices and faces that are not always famous, but are worthy of attention. Bringing those stories to the table has become easier now because of the racial reckoning. And I'm proud to say I see colleagues across the racial spectrum bringing stories of people of color, quality stories that don't just fly during Black History Month. Sometimes it's just the fundamentals. Send a press release, make a phone call, drop an email, hit me in my direct messages, Twitter, Insta, however you want to track me down. We're all trying to stay current and represent our communities with integrity, because we're not here to judge. We are here to tell, to share, to expose, and to give a spotlight to folks who probably wouldn't get it otherwise. And so everything that the previous speakers have addressed, I concur. We have a purpose, we have value, but we also can't do it without the community interacting with us. We are not in the ether. We are your neighbors. We live here too. We're just as concerned about the disparities in getting the COVID vaccine as anybody should be about their grandmothers. Those stories resonate. We're trying to get that out there on a regular, and visualize it can be a challenge on the TV side. People see us with our cameras coming at them, they run the other way. Don't do that. Please don't. Our jobs are made easier when we can find voices, not always famous, not always notorious, just people with opinions who care to share. It's a key part of our job. So when Black journalists organize, we talk about the same thing other journalists talk about. How do we get better stories across the finish line with the input of people who are believable, trustworthy, maybe even camera savvy? But if you're none of those things, sometimes you slip into the broadcast as well. And we try to exercise our best judgment when we utilize voices. I'm especially proud, since the racial reckoning kicked in last summer, that a lot more experts, Black experts, are working their way into the mix in print and broadcast journalism. And on the radio, I'm hearing and learning about more people who live right here in Southern California, doctors and nurses and grocery workers, you name it, people whose opinions and stories really matter and are now finally being told. So we're pushing through together. We can't do it without, the back and forth, the dialogue. And this really should be a dialogue, not a monologue. That was a complaint of old legacy journalism that mainstream ignored or talked over communities of color. We can't afford to do that. It's a lousy business model. And frankly, it's lazy journalism. We're working on getting better. And we appreciate the help of folks who agree with us that the First Amendment matters and the journalism journey belongs to all of us.
That's great. Thank you so much for that.
I would like to piggyback off what Beverly said. Like, so much of what she said, like, make sure you guys communicate with us. We are eager to tell your story. But I know with so many of us, like, we turn on our TV and we invite Beverly into our home. But for Brandon and I, we work at newspapers and we have to be invited to your home. You have to subscribe to us. And like, I think it's so much easier for people to pitch stories when they read the kind of stories that we do. And I know that I subscribe to the Sentinel. It's $4 a month. I think I paid $50 or $60 for the year. It's delivered to my door. I get the email
we
every
put you
week.
On payroll, Angel. Good job.
No,
I appreciate you. Good
same
job.
with the LA Times. I want to do this shameless plug because it matters. Oftentimes we get pitches for stories and like they're not the kind of stories we tell, or there could be a nugget that be part of a bigger story, which we appreciate, but it takes a little bit longer to gather string on those stories. And I want you guys to know that not every email is an instant story, but like if you read our work, then you will see the kind of stories we tell and you can direct us to them, because I get it all the time. And like, I appreciate the persistence, the quick emails, 3 to 5 sentences, let me know what's going on, the basics, who, what, when, where, how, and why we should be telling this story. But you have to invite us into your home. And for the LA Times, that's $1 for 8 weeks. And you can, I think it's like $96 for the year. And like both of these are like the cost of a latte for the month, because this news is so vital. If you read us, you will see we're telling stories about how white and wealthy communities are getting the access codes for the COVID-19 vaccine that are supposed to go to Black and Latino communities. You will see how we highlighted Amanda Gordon before she, was on the stage at the inauguration. You will see how we've highlighted, architect, Paul Williams, even before it was Black History Month, and talking about the work and how we see this Black architects work all over this city. Like, it's so important that you trust us a little bit to read our work first. So then when you see what we're doing wrong, you can point out this story was inaccurate, or this story was misrepresented, or we should not have this photo on the front. Like, we love the direct example so we can do better. We want to do better. We're working hard to earn your trust and we want to tell your story. So please share them with us and subscribe.
That was just perfect. I really appreciate the fact that we have so many questions that are coming up in the chat, and I do want to get to them. So I'm going to just kind of ask one more lightning round question for all of our panelists, and just say, how can we, how can newsrooms change to empower African-American storytellers and readers? And I'll start with you, Angel, and then we'll go to Beverly and Brandon quickly, if we can hear from all of you guys in the next few minutes. I think I just wanted to say one thing is that Commissioner Nunez really wanted to hear this answer as well. So again, the question is, how can newsrooms change to empower African-American storytellers and readers? Angel?
I think it's just by listening and getting and responding to those who write in, who tweet at us. And we're trying to do a better job at that at the LA Times. We have a readers rep where people send in their comments. People email us directly and let us know when we miss stories. And I respond back. I appreciate people letting us know where we can do better. So, like, we don't know what we don't know. And so I think oftentimes it's just having that direct line of communication between a reporter, an editor, or somebody, and just like being responsive to the community. Because really, like, in real life, we work for the community. We are serving the community. We write for the community. And part of that is like gaining your trust and doing this and telling the stories that you guys want to read and hear about too. And also enlightening you when you went to for other stories that you might have missed.
Oh, this is lightning round. I guess I should jump right in. Just to piggyback on what Angel said, we need to hear from folks who watch and frankly from folks who don't, because we're here for you. It really is a public service, not just a profit center. What we're all about in broadcast news, I can't speak for the entire industry, but I know a lot of my colleagues and I have had this conversation on a regular, that if we don't hear from people about their righteous stories, we will see it the next day, maybe in the LA Times or in the Sentinel, and think, dang, we should have got that call. There was a news conference, there was an event, and we wish we had known. Don't let us be on the outside looking in. Please loop us in when something meaningful is happening, you think we need to know about, and you want to share it with the world. That's why we're here. We Angel said it, we work for you and we live here too. It's not just we're telling about the community, we are the community. And we want to earn your trust on a regular basis. It's a constant challenge to do that. And we know there's a lot of apprehension, a lot of folks who actually shout at our news trucks. They think we're fake. We want to prove you wrong. Give us that chance.
Okay. Brandon, I think you've covered parts of this question, but I just wanted to know if you had anything to add quickly, because I know I have one or two questions in the chat I want to ask before we end the program.
Yeah, no problem. Just really quickly, I think, I just ask for patience from the public and then those people that work with us. And I think in Angel and my seat in Beverly, we do get tons of emails, but it's my job and I love it. So I have to cipher through thousands, hundreds of a day. I just say, if I don't answer you, I don't get back to you, it's okay. You might get picked up somewhere else. We may get back to you a month or two later. A good story is a good story, and it will get told, whether by us or by someone else. But we pride ourselves in that connection with the community, speaking for the community, having people from the community. I grew up in Inglewood, California, so this is my neighborhood. This is my community. I lived in Leimert Park for 7 years. So South LA, Los Angeles, that's who we are. So it won't exist without the public's participation, and whether it's digital or via print. Print is very important because there still is a digital divide of somewhat, but whether or not a digital divide, hard copy still lives, and many people want to open up that paper and touch it and feel it. But we're also there on the web now and via social media, and so we're meeting the readers where they need to be met. But we need you all to just be patient and stick with us and subscribe.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to acknowledge a question from Sheldon Cruz that works in the Civil Rights Department, helping us with upward mobility programming with youth engagement. And I wanted to just acknowledge that I think we've answered the question about how to get more young people involved. But I really appreciate Sheldon for being here today. We have another question, and I'll touch on it quickly, from James Wynn, that is a part of our department's Transgender Advisory Council. And when you think about, stepping into this space to make sure that the transgender press has representations, we just wanted to know, I think James's question was related to whether or not some of the journalists or any of the journalists that are mainstream would be open to co-writing stories or co-billing stories with different communities, and particularly talking about the transgender community. And anyone can take that question on.
Co-writing stories sounds fascinating. I don't know that my employer would allow that. We tend to run stories from colleagues who are on the payroll, so to speak. Freelancers don't really make it into the mix at a broadcast outlet like mine, but ideas are always welcome and sources are always welcome. So if you share the story, know the story, we could just put you on camera to talk about it and point us in the right direction and make sure that we get our pronouns right and our respect that is due the community. If we don't know, teach us, please, and tip us to the stories we're missing, because we know they're out there, and it's not always about an attack on a transgender citizen, but rather good news too. And we miss a lot of that because we just don't know where to go. We can't be everywhere. It's a big city, but with guidance and trusted sources, we can do better. And we would welcome that kind of input.
Right. Thank you so much, Beverly. Angel, did you have anything you want to add to that?
I just say at the LA Times, it's pretty similar with as Beverly's news organization as well. We typically have staff reporters tell those kind of stories, but we also have an opportunity for people to submit opinion pieces. You can Google that, like LA Times submit opinion pieces, and they're pretty lengthy. You can send them in, as well as we have freelancers who work in our features department. And there's a way to also contact the department to pitch an idea too. We would let someone just fully write that story out and have their byline on them if they are freelancers. As far as telling the stories, we're also open to telling those stories as well.
All right, I thank you for that. And I think, a number of questions have been asked, and I just wanted to know if there were any final thoughts from the panelists, as we end our program. If there's anything that you feel like we did not touch here, please let me know.
Oh, regarding internships, I know you heard from Angel about how it works at the LA Times. Because of pandemic concerns and the COVID still being with us, we don't have interns for the moment at NBC, but that will change post-pandemic. So people who are interested in pursuing a broadcast internship, obviously from college, should keep an eye on our websites, because they are also paid opportunities to shoulder with people who are doing the jobs like mine, and so many more people behind the scenes who have amazing journalism jobs that you might not know about. We have assignment editors and producers and content producers, and you know, the spectrum. If you've ever seen the credits at the end of a weekend newscast, it's a long list of people who work in local news. And study those titles. Reach out if you have questions about what those people do, because they're important and vital as well. So I may be one in front of the camera, but there's a gang of great people backing me up every day. And you can be a part of that team. Or if you're graduating soon and obviously can't do the internship because of social distancing, there are always just opportunities in other markets. LA is one of more than 200 cities that have TV stations, 3 to 5 per market typically. I started in Waco, Texas. You gotta start somewhere. It's not where you start, it's where you end up. And I learned every step of the way with, again, no regrets.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that final thought. And I want to just acknowledge you for allowing me to bring a busload of students to your NBC studios in Burbank when I was working for Austin Buettner at LAUSD, leading the partnership activities. And, I mean, some kids hadn't even been that far geographically in the city of Los Angeles and the Burbank area as well. So just thank you so much for always being available for your community. And I wanted to thank all of the panelists for, making sure that they are available to our community, and for being here today and sharing your invaluable thoughts and expertise. I don't know where we would like this conversation to go, as we near the end of another Black History Month. Want to know if there's anything else that you'd like to add about, where you'd like to see this conversation go. At the LA Civil Rights Department, we're about action. And if there's anything that you feel like that we need to do, or how we need to support you. I think you guys have shared a bit about opportunities to subscribe, but I'd like to share some final thoughts if you guys don't have anything else to share. But I'd like to yield the floor one more time to see where would you like this conversation to go.
I'd like to chime in briefly. It's advertising. I'm a big proponent for advertising. I work as an advertising executive with the paper, and it's critical. That's how we pay these writers. We pay these photographers. I mean, we need our equity from the city, from the county, and this is a discussion that is critical and needs to be had and continue to had. We've seen strides taken, and it's not just the LA Sentinel. It's media, ethnic media across the board, hyper local media. And we need to put a focus on that. And we do need to see the city of Los Angeles step up. We need to see various departments step up. The Black community is being, struck by this COVID at levels that are astronomical. But I do not see the sincerity or basically the reciprocation, how it should be for us to get the voice and to reach our community, because the community trusts us. So all I would say, and I know you're going to work on that, Capri, is we just need the help of persons like you to be on the front lines to continue to bridge those gaps. And we're doing great in the sense, like I said, we're blessed to have a viable print product, and the website is doing great, and advertising is trending in that direction. But it never can be enough, and we need more, and we need help. So if these corporate America wants to step up, they can step up by advertising and show up and put their money where their mouth is. So we would appreciate everybody's help in that. So thank you. That's just my thought.
Yes.
Capri, I love that you said you want to end on action, because there's some actions we all can take as people on this panel, as viewers in this discussion, as community members, when we care about our neighbors and our families and ourselves. It's subscribing to your local media, whatever that might be, wherever you are. It's holding them accountable when they screw up, and applauding them when they do something right by sharing that, sending a note, sending these stories to other people. It's also like you being a storyteller as well. Let us know what you want to hear about in your paper, in your news organizations as well. And then also just as we think about all of like this awakening we're in right now, it takes all of us. We need you, the media needs to be there to hold public officials accountable, to, bring out these stories where we're talking about inequities and push for solutions to help laws to be changed and passed. Like, we need each other. So I just hope that you would give us all a chance, as Beverly, invite her into your home on TV, the Sentinel at your door, the LA Times, on your social media, and on your phone screens, because it's so important that you read the news and then also share it as well, because that's how we continue to get these stories told, and we get more people in the decision-making process. When the community said we want something different from the LA Times shifted, it got me into this role, and I appreciate that. And I am there, at the table, making sure that our stories are told, are framed, but it's everybody at the paper that's doing that as well. Like, it's just me as an accountability partner that was brought on because of the readers. So I just want to let you guys know you have incredible power. You should be energized and spurred to action. You have the power to do those things. I just implore you to act.
Right. That is great. I really appreciate that. Beverly, anything you'd like to add here?
No, I'm just grateful people invite me into their homes, because that's a free kind of thing. But I also endorse Angel and Brandon's messages that the dead tree media needs your help too. I subscribe to the hard copies and get the ink stain fingertips and relish a cup of coffee and unfolding my paper and learning about places and people I wouldn't know about otherwise. You stumble into so much good stuff when you read a newspaper, as compared to selectively finding things on your phone. So for what it's worth, I too endorse newspapers and news in general. And thank goodness people still watch, read, and trust. But for the young ones who want to do the same, get into this mix and take my job, just learn the fundamentals. Reading, writing, and research will serve you in whichever angle, whichever platform you choose to pursue. But if journalism, if you got that itch, come scratch it in broadcast or print or radio or new media or something that hasn't been invented yet. But African-American voices deserve to be heard. And I'm a proud member of that community. And I welcome more to come join us in the struggle.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists. Angel Jennings, Brandon Brooks, and Beverly White. And we also like to thank Councilmember Markley Thomas for being with us today at the event. I'd really like to just take a moment as we wrap things up to thank our team at LA Civil Rights for making this event a success. To our interns, Dalen, Charlie, both from USC, and Brooke and Vivica from UCLA. Definitely would like to thank Tammy for kind of making sure everything works, along with Jamana and others that helped us with their outreach. And finally, I'd really like to thank Mark Pamperman for really, keeping things together and making sure that on our comm side, he made sure this event happened and came together. And I just wanted to also acknowledge one of our commissioners. We have Vicki Curry, who is our newest commissioner on the Commission on the Status of Women that deals with gender issues. And just wanted to, simply close by affirming that Los Angeles, must do better about who gets the microphone, who's telling our stories and what stories get to be told. Across the nation, over 75% of reporters are white, which does not reflect our diversifying nation. Here in Los Angeles, we count diversity as one of our strengths, but covering the city means investing in supporting our reporters from a variety of backgrounds. And it also means investing in local journalism. I just really encourage everyone once again to read, watch, subscribe to your local news outlets and follow the reporters who are telling the stories you care about, and use the power that Angel mentioned. Use your power in your voice to support the journalists that are accessible to our community. Those journalists that tell our stories in a unique way with dignity and respect. There's an expression, we all do better when we all do better. And in this case, it's true. When we support Black journalists, we support a more diverse, we support the most diverse voices in our newsroom, and we support the new storytelling experiences that are covering our city. And I think it leads to a more vibrant conversation. So I hope everyone was able to take something away from this event today. And I hope the conversation does not end here. If you want to learn more about this event or the work of our department, we will be posting this on our website soon. Please visit civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. And again, that is civil and human rights, one word, .lacity.org, or follow us at LA Civil Rights. Again, thank you everyone for being here with us today. We learned a lot, we covered a lot, and now let's leave here and do a lot. Thank you again. Bye. Thank you so much, panelists.
God bless.
Be well. Keep the faith.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you guys all for joining us.
I know. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Black History Month.
All right. We're still here.
365.
Alive.